record this on this computer. Okay, so we're recording. Okay, brilliant. Okay, so welcome, folks. We've got a few people who are online already, and we've got some people who are going to join us, and there's going to be some people who missed this, but we'll be able to watch this going backwards. So just let me grab something, and then I'll start straight. The snow, that was what I was housebound. I was actually snowed in for about a week. Welcome to Leadership Gigs. You know, we all did a book which was called Leadership Gigs #1, and as following hot on the heels of that, we ended up doing Leadership Gigs #2. And the really wonderful thing about that is both of those books achieved the #1 best ranking books. Just as a bit of housekeeping, folks, if you're listening in, can you just put your microphones on mute so that I've got a little bit of feedback coming at my ears? So just put your recorders on mute if you can. So the wonderful thing about the Fit for Purpose leadership book is that we ended up with 16 authors, and I think we had 15 in this one. And that was received incredibly well. #1 thing that happened was, firstly, our little WhatsApp group, Leadership Gigs, suddenly got itself a global audience. And the amount of feedback that I've had about these two books from people who said they really love the way it was put together. They certainly like the diversity of the and the breadth of experience of people who are contributing to them. So on the basis of that, I thought, okay, let's get our third book going. And it looks like the way that the rhythm that we're settling into here is that we're doing about one every 6 months at this stage. So it looks like it's probably going to be a book kicking off in March and one for Christmas, for the Christmas period as well. Okay, so those were the two books that we put out. They were two best ranked bestsellers. Now, were they bestsellers? This is an argument about, is it an Amazon bestseller? I think you've got to do about 1,000 copies for a bestseller. So when it went out, they didn't sell 1,000 copies on their first go through, but they did rank #1 in their categories for a couple of days. So that certainly makes them a best ranked bestseller. I'm hoping that eventually we'll get to bestseller status with both of those books. But really great exercise to be in. So here's book #3 coming up. So we've got Fit for Purpose Leadership #3. And I've got a little bit of tweaking to do on the cover there, but we're probably going to end up with about 16 articles this time. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to walk you through what's required. Firstly, how the book is set up, and secondly, what's required from the perspective of being a writer. So firstly, I think one of the things that made Fit for Purpose leadership work really well was that we gave it a top and tail. So we gave it a context at the start. And a lot of the feedback I got about the book was the fact that the first chapter really orientated to people about what we thought and felt about leadership currently. And at the time, we were coming from the idea of corporate well-being and wellness, a big trend of corporate well-being and wellness that's coming through, particularly from the US. There was another trend about commercial reality and best practice. Now, the six big topics that we found going back over a year ago was around health, mindset, social relationships, meaning and purpose, best practice, emerging trends. But since then, we've had, in the second book, I put in an other category, and I've had people said, I want to write an article, but it doesn't fit into one of those 6 categories. I want to write about business performance or commercial reality, or I want to talk about communication or self-awareness. And some people said, oh, how do I shoehorn that into, which one would communication shoehorn into? Would that go into best practice or into social and relationships? I guess you've got to figure that out for yourself. But what we're doing this time around is we're opening up the categories to 7. So health, mindset, social relationships, meaning and purpose, best practice, emerging trends, and other. So if you really can't find the category, you can put it down as other. Okay. But what I found is that the reader likes it because in the opening chapter, we were able to say, here's the 6 big topics we're looking at currently, and it meant that they could flip to those 6 areas quite quickly and read the bits that they were of most interest to them. Having said that, a lot of people said, well, I was interested in meaning and purpose, but I found all the other articles were just fabulous as well. So it's a book that you can dip into and go wherever you want, and that's what I think was a bit of the charm about the book, that it was well set out. In fact, a friend of mine who's a publisher came back and she asked if she could actually borrow the format, because she said that's a really good format. She said she noticed when she bought the book, and she said, I found it really easy to read and I didn't want to put it down. So I'm going to let you in a little bit on the behind the scenes here about what makes it easy to read. Well, the step one is we've given it 6 nice clear areas and include the new one of the 7th. Okay, so here's how it works. Firstly, the challenge starts on Wednesday, March the 7th. That's tomorrow. And it finishes on Friday, March the 16th at 5 p.m. So close of business. Okay, so I think you've got about, 9 or 10 days to do this. Okay, and really it's got to be this. Number one, it's got to be an original article, and it's got to be 1,500 to 2,000 words max. Now, on the Facebook forum, I put the Leadership Gigs. I put up a PDF of our writer's guide, and I said 1,500 words. And it was really to manage the expectations about writing a lot. Here's what I've learned from doing these books. When we get it around, when I ask people what article did you read and did you like the best, the articles that were around about the 1,500 word mark got read more than the 2,000 word mark, because what it does is it translates into probably 2 or 3 extra pages. So somewhere in between there is a nice happy medium. Okay. What I found is when the articles go over 2,000 words, you start adding pages, and it's just a thing. When someone picks up the book, they go, gee, that looks a good article, I'll read it later. Whereas these articles are designed to be read. So there's an article there which is about 4 or 5 pages. You can read that over a cup of coffee. Very, very quick. It's a very quick read. I actually learned that with writing my own book. I wrote a book called Starting and another book called The Money Chimp. And I found that in my book, I did no chapters more than a page and 2 pages, 2-page chapters. That was it. But people came back, my readers came back and said, my God, I love that book. And I said, why? Oh, it was such a fast read. No, it was shorter chapters. Okay. So the third element is that you write a bio, and the bio is no more than 200 words, and it's in your third person. So it's not a first person thing. You're talking about yourself. Okay. And the fourth element is high-res headshots, and you've got to sign a copyright declaration, because when we submit the book, it goes through a machine, if you like, or a scanner that picks up whether something's been pulled that hasn't been cited, or you've plagiarized or whatever. And unfortunately, we pay for that service. And if the machine stops and says, no, we've picked something up, we actually pay for that, and it spits it out and says, no, we can't print this. So that's probably the way the world's going at the moment. So, but it's a good, nice check for us. So it has to be an original article. Of course, if you want to cite references and things like that, and use fair citation or fair usage, that's quite okay, as long as you cite and reference what you're doing. I hate to say it, but I did have a couple of articles in book 1 where people felt the deadline was so tight that they just cut and paste swathes out of another book, and I said, no, it's not going to work that way at all. Okay, so they had to go back and rewrite those sections. So make sure it's an original artwork, an original article. I've found too that if I give you a tight deadline, that you'll actually write your best stuff. I recently did a book where we gave a very tight deadline, and people kept pushing the deadline out and out and out and out, and it was just like herding cats in the end. Whereas if I say Friday the 16th, if it's not in, it's not in. If we don't get 16 articles, well, that's it. Clearly you didn't want it bad enough. So we'll just hold book number 3 over to another time, maybe. Okay, your article. Choose from one of the 7 themes. The highest value thinking. This is really important, that you put your highest, best thinking, your highest value thinking relevant to business leaders that will make a difference. I don't want a business reader to open this and go, ho-hum, oh yeah, I've heard about that before. I really want your take on that, okay? Having said that, it doesn't need to be academic, overly academic. It's got to be quite relational. So to put a bit of yourself in there, because if somebody likes what they're reading about what you're saying, they will want to get in contact with you and chat with you, and they want to get a little bit of your story. So it's good to put a little bit of your own story in there, but make it a little bit relational as well. That also helps with the reading aspect of it. But the thing I've got to be really strong about this editorially, it's got to be high value thinking. I don't, for example, I don't want you to say, start with why, and it's just a rework of Simon Sinek's stuff, as I saw one article did. you know, that's already been done, but if you had an elegant twist on that, by all means use that, as long as it's going to be incredibly user-friendly and relevant, but more than anything, relevant to our readership. The feedback I get from people I trust and respect say that the first two books, they say they bought both books and they wanted to buy the second book because the standard of book number one was so high. And then I chased up feedback for book two and they said, God, book number two was just as well. It was just as good a book. So I'm really, really pushing you guys that book three is going to continue with that trend, that we're really putting out really high stuff. It really pushes out the Leadership Gigs name for a start off. A lot of people have asked me, what is Leadership Gigs? How do I join it? You know, it's a good little community. Okay, a big no-no on this is no spin. So don't be tempted to try and slip something in. It looks like a sell or a spin. If somebody likes what you're saying, they will contact you. That's the feedback I'm getting from the authors. Okay, so try and resist the urge to try and spin what you're doing. And you know, I do this course, and if you click on this link, you can go through to the course. So I prefer you didn't do that. Just say, yes, I've got a course. If someone's interested, they will contact you. Okay, is that you happy with that, guys? Okay, good. Yes, do your own work. Don't do any unsighted borrowings. I've already covered that. Here's the big thing. It has to be proofed. I don't want to work too hard at this doing proofing. If you just put your microphone on mute, folks, if you can put that, because I'm getting some feedback somewhere. Make sure it's proofed. If you need to, get an editor to proof it. Get someone competent who knows how to spell and knows grammar to actually spell check the document really carefully. What I want is a finished manuscript. And things like special names, for example, if you've got special names and I don't know them and it goes to print with a typo in it, it's just embarrassing for you, but it's not good for the book either. But it's particularly embarrassing if you've got something wrong. And I saw somebody who rushed a document to me, and they put in a placeholder name, John Smith, and they're not John Smith, while they were trying to find that other person's name. So it was going to go to print with John Smith in this particular area. So they hadn't proofed it. And then I picked it up and said, do you really want to say John Smith? And they said, oh, no, it was supposed to be so-and-so. But make sure that your citations or references are there if required. On that matter, use your Oxford Standard or your US Standard citation. I use Smith said. If it's referring to Smith, it's 2018. And then you might want to then put in your reference section, if you include a reference section. This particular thing is surname, initials, year, title, publisher. So it'll be Smith A, 2018, Lead with Laughter, Penguin. So that someone could track that book down if they need to. It's just your standard Oxford Standard, basic citation. In terms of the manuscript that you submit to me, what I want is Word or Pages document. I don't want a PDF. People submit PDFs to me. It means I've got to scan them and it's just a headache. So I just want a Word document. Times Roman 12 point, single spaced, not double spaced or 1.5 spaced, just single spaced, no formatting, no borders, no colors. Right? If you want italic, by all means put an italic in there. If you want to put a bold in there for emphasis, put that in there. But I don't want things like special fonts, unless, of course, Sapna in the last book, she was trying to demonstrate a branding. She wrote a really wonderful article on how branding helps you communicate as a leader. And it was really important in her article to actually show different typefaces and fonts. Okay. But what she did was she actually screened those fonts and supplied them as a JPEG, as a scan. Okay. So we've got a set formula. The font that I use has been really well researched. It's what I call a friendly font, that when you look at it, it's got a roundness to it. It's got a nice chubbiness to it that is very pleasing to the eye. So people find it very easy to read, and they don't know why, but it's actually, I put a lot of research into what fonts get read the most, and just looking at things like, if we give somebody 5 pages to read, how far do they get in it? And we test things like retention, recall, and people can recall things at a third of the way through, 2/3 of the way through, 3/4 of the way through. So the retention of what's been read goes up just purely based on the font. Okay, so but the document I want you to supply to me must come as Times Roman 12 point, no formatting, and just keep it plain text for me. It's a little bit like when you did your university course, except that it's just single space. And there's a little example I've given you there. In this article, I'll try to convince you that leadership is dead. Collegiate leadership is the new model. So just do your justified right and left and just a plain document. Standard. It makes it easy for me. Your bio is 200 words max. It's in the third person. Adam Smith is a personal trainer who specialises in working with executives over 40 with back injuries. He was recently featured on Channel 4's Trust Me, I'm a Doctor. Plus your preferred links. Here's his LinkedIn link, Smith, and www.smithfit.co.uk. Can I suggest, please don't put your personal telephone or your personal email in this. I hate to say it, we live in an age where people troll through stuff on Kindle just looking for these links so they can spam you or they can mess with your mind. So just put in links that you're happy for people to go to, okay? And don't overdo it with the links, but honestly, just give a link that generally a generic link that people could find you if they wanted to, okay? But yeah, the bio is just a straight 200 words area. This is probably the area I had the biggest headache with people, and it's getting a headshot. And firstly, the headshot, I think, try and keep it, instead of it being like a mug shot, if you can do I don't know if you can see this, but the headshots in these ones, there were ones with just neutral backgrounds, and there are ones, for example, that have got really nice backgrounds on them, or interesting backgrounds. Like the one, for example, I tested on, which one do you remember? Oh, it was the guy with the tennis player, for example. And there's something about that. It's a nice, friendly in situ shot, for example. Another one there was this one here, Karen's one where she's holding a coffee cup. So the tone and feel of the book is about relational. We're trying to make nice eye contact. If you can, supply one where you've got nice eye contact for the back of the book. So the photos are going to be used firstly on the back of the book, and every chapter will also include a picture of the person who wrote, the author of the book, who wrote that as well. Okay, so for that I need a high-res image. Now, for me, high-res is 300 kilobytes to 600 kilobytes is okay. 1,500 kilobytes is okay. Please don't send me, as someone did recently, 48 megabytes or 48 kilobytes. It was a massive file, right? And don't send me web images of about 72 dpi, because as you can see, the one on the left here, that's a 72 dpi image. And when I then blow it up, I'm taking it, it was actually a thumbnail. It was actually about that size on a website. And I'm trying to blow it up to around about that size. It's starting to degrade in image size there. But if I pull it up really big, you can see it's no clarity to it. Whereas this is a really nice high-res shot. This is 600. How did I do that? Why does that happen? As soon as I wave the fit slide. Okay, the nice thing about this one was about a 600 kilobyte image. That was the image size of it, and it scales nicely. Okay, so when you're printing to paper, okay, if you're going on web, 72 dpi is fine, but if you're printing to a book, this particular book is printed at 300 dots per inch. Okay, so it's a standard web press, and it just does a bog standard 300 dots per square inch. Okay, so there's no point sending a 2,400 kilobyte file. 300 to 600 is fine. Okay, when you do your scan. High res, as I said, the reason we're using them is we're using them firstly on the back of the book, and we're using them in the book. In fact, we have one of the authors on the call right now. There's Ian. Ian's written a fabulous chapter in this book. In fact, Ian just did a webinar right now just on his chapter and his 7-step blueprint. But you can see I've used Ian's photo on the back of the book, and I've also used the image in the book. Well, it's not colour; it comes out as black and white. And there's the diagram that Ian supplied as well. and that was supplied as a I wonder if I go backwards, does it make it wind down? Sorry about that, folks. I've got a very, very overreactive mouse here. Also, too, the photos are in the order that you appear in the book, and also with the writing here. So we actually put them in the order. So, for example, Jerry wrote about health, and he's the first person. And Romeo, he wrote about mindset, and so he's the second one, etc., etc. Right? So the authors on the back appear in the order that they appear in the book, and the listing down here also is in the order that they appear in the book. And a new feature of the book is that I'm putting the covers of the other two books on there and how to buy them inside the book as well. So if you're in this book, you're going to be promoted in future books as well. Okay, so that's the nice thing about it. Okay. In terms of supplying diagrams, and you see in the last slide there that Ian supplied a diagram for his reviewing the business, a model showing the 4 zones of the business. He supplied that as a high-res diagram for me, and that got inserted into it, and it was supplied in black and white. Okay. Now, I had someone in book number 1 who sent me some beautiful colour shots, diagrams, but remember, the interior of the book is halftones and black and white. So you can see here, if I'm showing a colour wheel, you can see what happens to the colour. It disappears at that point. Believe it as well, the difference between red and black is the same. So red actually reduced to grey tone comes out as black as well. So if you've got a red and black diagram, it'll just come out as a black diagram. Okay. So if you've got diagrams, try and supply them in grayscale. Okay, and again, 300 to 600 DPI is brilliant. This is probably the most important one. I've already touched on the fact that we run the copy through a scanner that actually picks up for things like citation, fair citation, or plagiarism. But you basically, everyone who contributes and plays this game with us submits a declaration that says, I, Adam Smith, verify that I'm the author of the original article, and then name your article, and then name the category that you want the article to appear in, okay? And that I've observed fair usage and include citation where relevant. This is a standard copyright waiver for authors. I, Adam Smith, give permission to Writing Matters Publishing to incorporate this article in the company image in the published compendium Fit for Purpose Leadership 3. So as we use it on paperback and Kindle, so you're seeing how we're using it. And I understand that a percentage of royalties from the sale will go to a charity, and subsequent earnings will then cover the design and layout. So if you were to write your own book and undergo this process, I have a publishing company, and when we work with an author, our book publishing starts from £2,000 or £2,500, depending on what the size of the book, plus their printing, etc. So in this one, you get to submit an article in a book, and it's the book sales that actually cover off most of the costs of doing that. So, and it's the way that we do that is we ask people to do things like lean into the Kindle and lean into the paperback campaigns, because when the book sales then provide the costs. And I've got to sell a lot of books to cover off the time and money that goes into actually preparing the book. But I'm not asking you guys to put money up front for that. Okay. And then you've got to send that and date it, and if you can send it, sign it. I don't know how you do that, but just your name and the date is probably enough there. I don't think you need to send a signature in it. I know where you live. Now, where the book, don't leave town. The deal is that you buy retail directly off Amazon or Kindle. So if you want a book, you can buy it retail straight off Amazon. When it gets uploaded, it'll be put up as a global print-on-demand title. And not only does it go to Amazon, but it's also filtered into Barnes and Noble's book theme, into, is it Foibles? I think that's one of them. Is it not Foils, sorry. So Foils is one of them. So it goes into all of those. It gets into global distribution in those particular areas, but it goes out through our Amazon distribution channel as a print on demand. So if you ever see things that says it's out of stock, that's Amazon's little way of saying you guys need to lean in and start promoting it more. It's never out of stock because it's a print on demand title. So nobody holds stock anywhere. Amazon doesn't hold stock. Kindle is a digital product, but Amazon does not have printed books living in a warehouse somewhere. It's all handled out of a print-on-demand supplier. So the only reason Amazon put up there's a 2 to 3 day wait and it's out of stock is to stimulate demand for it. Okay. Or you can buy it wholesale, and the deal is that you've got to buy 100 copies because I can't get the economies of scale under 100 copies. However, you can buddy up with somebody who lives close by, and you can split the print run. So you can do 50 books each if you want to. Now, some of our authors, I've tried to keep the cost of that as reasonable as I possibly can. You're paying nowhere near retail price to get your book done. Okay, you're getting a very good rate on 100 copies, believe you me. But I had some authors who just said, you know what, 100 books, they got the books done. A little bit of that goes to offset our costs in producing this thing, but not a lot. But they then came back and said those books, they then sold them. So let's say you're buying them for, let's say for argument's sake, £5 a copy, and you're selling for £10. Well, I had a couple of authors on the book number one who bought 100 books and they had sold 100 books within about 2 weeks. And how did they do that? They went and did speaking. They spoke at an event and they took their books to an event, and then the next thing, they sold the books and said, we need to get another 100 books. So the book is an amazing tool. If you go and see somebody and you take your book, a copy of the book, and you put down your business card with your book and you say, I'm a best-selling author, there's Ian holding up his Leadership Gigs book, right? If you go in to see someone and you hold up the book with your business card attached to it and you put a Post-it note to your chapter, I can't tell you just what an impact that makes. And for example, a book is an amazing authority credibility piece. So the book Starting, for example, has been in the top 20 business books in and out of the top 20 business books for the last 2 years, as is my other book, The Money Chimp. And the reason that we're able to do that is because the second part of this whole process, if you're on this challenge, is to lean in. And it's to go onto Amazon and get the links to your books and to actually incorporate those on your website, or to email them out to people, or put it in your social media like your Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn, right? And to promote the book pre-release, and then promote the special price release date on Twitter, Facebook and email. And then when you go networking, give people a heads up about that, and give your network a heads up that you're about to lose a book. Build some buzz around it, like 6 weeks out or 4 weeks out. Start telling people the book's coming, and ask for. And when people buy the book, ask them also to leave a testimonial, because that really bumps the ranking. So the fact that, firstly, we've got 18 authors who all went out on average to 120 people, who then bought the book, who pushed it out through their social networks. This book absolutely just romped into management and leadership category, which is incredibly hard to get as a number one title on it, but it's just romped in it. And once you've done that, it tends to hang around that particular level for quite some time. And you can then say, I'm a best-selling author in a number one ranked management and leadership book, or a number one ranked coaching and mentoring book, or a teams book, or a management book. So we've got management leadership. We've got number one in Canada, or number 5 in Canada and Australia. We've got number 1 in the UK and America, for example. Not America, UK, sorry. This book, number 1 in the UK. You can put that on your CV. Okay, put those links on your website. You'll be amazed at how many people go, wow, you've got a book. The great thing about a book, if I look at it from the BBC's perspective, when the BBC were looking for someone to talk about money issues for millennials, they had a choice between an IFA and me, who I'd written a book on how young people manage their money. And they Google search millennials and money, and of course I come up with The Money Chimp. Okay, and this book was written for 18 to 28s, because most 18 to 28 spend 130% of their weekly income, and they collect in the UK alone, they own 8.3 billion on their credit cards. Right, and so the BBC rang me up and said, "Can we get you to come on air?" And I said, on the radio, I said, "Yeah, happy to." They said, "What's your book about?" I said, "Oh, that's really easy. It's how millennials can manage money so they spend less, save more, and get out of debt faster." So we'll cover things like how to have a little book pitch. It's a leadership book, and it shows you how to do X, Y, Z. So that if someone from the BBC rings up and says, can you come on the radio and talk about that particular area, and they will pick it up, you know how to actually pitch your book to them as well. So the book is absolutely wonderful in that particular area. Okay. Now, to help you do that, I will supply back to you a 3D image of the book and links. You'll be able to get the links off the website, but I'll send you a 3D image of the book, and I'll give you a PDF copy of your chapter. And for some people, they want a PDF of the whole book for marketing purposes. More than happy to send you a PDF of the whole book as well if you want to do that as a marketing tool. So as you can see with Ian, I've used Ian again. So Ian got a complete PDF of his whole entire chapter. And what I did was I actually sandwiched that between the cover and the back of the book. So he was able to send that out, I hope, to somebody who could see what the cover of the book like, what his chapter looked like, and what the back of the book looked like as well. And if you send that out, if you make that available on LinkedIn or put it up on Facebook, you can use collateral like that as an upload just to actually talk about what you're on about. Okay. The other thing that I would encourage you to do when you're getting this book is actually to go onto Amazon and create an author bio as well. And so there's a bunch of books that I've produced that are doing quite well. All of those are doing book as both paperback and Kindle books. And it's good to update a photo of you always get a photo of you holding your book. Even better, ask your readers to send me a book wherever you go in the world. Take the book with you, and I want you to send me a book of you holding the book in a really exotic place, and you can use them on the publicity. So I've got books from Paris, I've got books from Turkey, I've got books from Asia, I've got books from Vietnam, I've got South America, I've got people who took the money chimp starting down to the Rio Games on Ipanema Beach, all sorts of stuff. So it's a really fun thing to see where your books actually show up. Okay, that's a really good tool. And then, of course, you got to get cracking, which is Friday the 16th of March is your deadline. So I want to now open up to you if you've got any questions or things that I haven't actually covered. If you've got a question, I'm more than happy to use, say, the next, 5 minutes or so, just answering any questions that you feel you might want me to handle. I think I've covered off most of it. All of this is covered in the Writer's Guide too, by the way. But does anyone have any questions that they feel, they would like to ask at this point?
What's the proposed publish date, Andrew?
Oh, that's a great question. The question was, if you missed it, was what is the proposed publishing date? Okay, Robin, this book here, book number 1. I don't know if anyone who was in book 1 is on this call, but we did the challenge. We did the whole challenge in 7 days, and the book was released 2 weeks later as a finished book. Right now, I had something to prove at that point. Right? I can't tell you. I'd bent over backwards and then backwards again to try and get that book out really, really super quickly. Okay. The second book was out once the deadline was over. Was out within a month. Now, if you know anything about publishing, that is extraordinary. But the point is that I have developed publishing systems that enable me to do special projects like this. And I've created the templates. They're all ready to go. All I need to do is drop the stories in and then just do the design work. But what it means is the process goes like this. The first thing that we do is a Kindle release, and we get our number 1 ranking on Kindle first. And then we will then carry over the Kindle ranking onto the front cover of the book. So I never say it's I'll say it's a number 1 UK ranked Kindle book, for example. In this case, it was a paperback, and it was number 1 in paperback, and it was also in Kindle as well. But the first thing is to get that ranking. Okay, doesn't matter where you get it as long as you get a number 1 ranking somewhere. So our first campaign is always Kindle. The book is always ready to go, and as soon as we hit number 1, bang, we hit it out we go hard release on the paperback, and then we push campaign number 2. Now the whole thing is when you come on this project, is you've really got to join in the buzz. You can't leave it to your colleagues. And the thing I can say about both books, in this one, it was everyone was in really going out. Now, I can't tell you, it's really addictive when you start seeing the rankings start to climb on the book. You go and you get in the top 100. You start out at 240,000 something, and then it gets into the top 1,000, then the top 100, then it gets top 50, then top 20, and then you just can't leave your computer. You're taking screenshots of anything that moves at that point because you just want to get the number one. I can't tell you, it is really exciting. It's like a horse race. You then clip over to see who else is number one, and you look at who else is trending. And for example, when you leave Richard Branson in your dust, for example, or you read Ray Dalio in the dust, and you're leaving books behind like that. For me, a personal best was to leave Lean Management was one I was trying to knock off, and we did that because it was a management book, right? We went for the management title. It was so nice to see that. Believe it or not, the one I had the hardest job to knock off was Think and Grow Rich, because there are some people out there who you just see amazing stuff like Think and Grow Rich dropped its price tag from $1.99 US down to 90p, and then down to 45p to hang on to that number one spot. Now, what we did was we were just geeing everyone up on Twitter and on the WhatsApp group saying, you've got to buy it, you've got to tell your friends, because they just couldn't beat 18 people with 120 people each buying all on the one day at the 1 hour. And that's how we get it to number one. We buy it on a certain day. I hope that helps. Yeah. Any other questions in there? I get excited about it. I love doing this.
Andrew, how do we avoid this overlapping on articles?
How do we avoid?
Overlapping on articles.
Oh, okay. So you've got people who are doing the same thing?
Well, maybe not exactly the same, but maybe too similar.
Yeah. I'll give you an example of that, a really good example. There's a project I'm working on at the moment on Agile. It's just about Agile coaching, right? And the thing is, I wouldn't worry about overlap because everyone's got their own take on something, right? So you might refer to similar principles, but you'll have different anecdotes, you'll have different case studies, you'll have a different you'll have a different journey of how you actually came to be doing that. So I'm not that worried. So, for example, in the book number one, we actually had a whole lot of people who felt it really relevant to do health topics. And some of those dovetailed. There were a couple on nutrition, but each had their own take on nutrition. What I did as the editor was I read Nick, you'd know Dom, yeah?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So Dom wrote a really good, and his was around nutrition, but Sarah Lucas, for example, hers was on energy, and someone else's was on flexibility. So they were able to make it relevant to the reader by picking the one, what was unique about their particular take. And as the editor, if I could see, no, this is way too similar here, I would read it carefully and say, I think there's an angle you've missed, and could you rewrite a couple of paragraphs there just to give it a twist? And so we ended up with, I think, how many did we have? We had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We had 6 health articles, and they were all really good articles. Some of them are similar, but all very unique in their own way.
Great. Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions in there? I don't want to keep you all night, guys, because I think we've covered most. But any other questions?
Andrew, it's Tony. Hello.
Hey, Tony. How are you, mate?
I'm very good. How are you?
Yeah.
Question for you. The 7 categories that we have at the moment, how many people do you have in each category they need to write?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's a brilliant question, because in book one, I thought the first 7 people who came through, 6 people were all health.
Correct, yeah.
I know we're going to have a health book. Well, the good thing about our publishing is we could change it for fit for purpose. Leadership still fits health. If it was all going to be health things, or if we didn't get all the categories, we would just extend it. We could be creative, if I can use that word.
Okay.
But what I did on the second book was I got people to send me an email with what they felt they might want to work on. And then I looked at the spread, and if I felt that one category was a little bit too top heavy, I went back and said, could that be reworked into another category?
Okay.
Yeah. So as the editor, I was able to massage it a little bit. Yeah.
And if you had to have like your wish list and you have all these people writing for you,
Yeah.
Is there things that the last two books have not covered that will add tremendous value on the third book?
Yeah, this is a really good question too. Tony, when we did this, we were looking. I was looking at research into corporate well-being and wellness. Right. I actually did some work for a bank recently where they really poo-pooed the whole well-being and wellness thing. So maybe it's going out of favour again. I don't know, but they were really on about corporate responsibility and commercial reality. So there are trends that come through. That's why I put emerging trends in there. However, there might be things we miss. So, for example, right now, I don't know about you, but you'll pick up on trends that you think, yeah, that really applies to leadership, but it's not getting. Is that an emerging trend, perhaps, or is this a category where you say, no, this really is a category that really needs to be addressed? So, for example, Tara Halliday, who she did a really good article on imposter syndrome, for example, right? And so does that fit mindset, or does it meaning and purpose, or is it a best practice or an emerging trend? So some of the authors, I had a bit of a discussion with them on the phone about which one what's your gut telling you that it fits into, or is there a category you feel we need to create for this? Tony, I'm really flexible. I'm really open for this. If there's a better category name there, well, by all means, let's talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Any other questions before we wrap up, folks? So I think I've covered it. This will be as a recording. If you want a copy of the recording, you can email me at the best. What you can just message me on the WhatsApp group. Private message me on the WhatsApp group if you want with your email, and I'll send you a recording of this. Okay, I'll via WeTransfer. I'm really excited about book number 3. I thought, oh no, here we go again. But as soon as I did the cover, I got really, really excited again. I thought, yeah, I'm really keen to get into it. And I'm also keen to see what new trends are coming through or what new thoughts are coming through. But the thing that I know, folks, is the acceptance of this book has been really, has got a lot of acceptance. And not just in the UK, but in America, it picked up. Canada, for some reason, we've got a fan base in Canada. We've definitely got a fan base in Australia and Singapore. And I'm starting to get inquiries from South Africa, for example, who are really looking for guidance on what is the best of the best in leadership, in the leadership area. And I think we've provided lots of scope in there. I think the other thing too is just the fact that it's Leadership Gigs is starting to get a good reputation, and I feel embarrassed to say it. I feel, is that actually true? It's global, but I have to say it. We're getting a bit of a reputation globally for who is Leadership Gigs. What is Leadership Gigs? It sounds, it put out 3 books now or 2 books now. What are they up to? So that in itself is getting a lot of interest. And in 2018, there's a couple of projects which I'm going to launch with people on Leadership Gigs. Leadership Gigs was initially set up to provide very Chatham House rules support to leaders. It wasn't meant to be a promotion website, but it was to give support to one another. But it was also to try and solve meaningful problems as well, to start to get involved in solving some meaningful problems from a leader's perspective. And I'm really proud to say that the first 2 books, while we didn't give a lot, we were able to contribute to a couple of charities, which was a really nice thing for us as leaders to say we're contributing to something. Whether we tie that in with the UN 17 goals or I think the both ones that we picked were the Red Cross both times for both things that happened, that we gave money to Red Cross, which was a really nice thing. So, and as a result, that got picked up at Red Cross at AGM, where they said we were given money by Leadership Gigs who've written a book, and they talked about our book. So that's where it is. Your job, though, folks, is to push it out there, is to talk about it and say, I'm going to be in this book. I'll get you a 3D copy of the book. If I tweet it or put it on the WhatsApp group, you've got the 3D image right there. But the challenge starts at 1 minute past midnight tomorrow. So no pressure. It starts tomorrow, right? So I hope you've got enough information there. The writer's guide's there. If you know someone in leadership, in the Leadership Gigs Forum, just make some noise in there. Say, I'm thinking of doing this, because people who've thought about doing it think, oh, yeah, of course. When was that? And just tell Andrew, and he'll send you the podcast of the webinar of this particular event as well, so you can join in too. I'll finish on this point. In both cases, we had more authors than we had spaces. And from an editorial point of view, having edited a lot of books, and I've got 2 professional editors who read every single article very, very carefully. It was a tough job to whittle it down, but there's 1 or 2 articles we've held over for book number 3. But we've got plenty of spots in there. So I want to encourage you to really, really lean into this. It's a wonderful journey. It's absolutely wonderful journey. If Ian was still on the call, he'd say the same thing. Thanks for your time, folks. I really look forward to seeing you in Fit for Purpose Leadership number 3, Leadership Gigs, and just do your best. And we'll talk to you soon.
Perfect. Thanks, Andrew.
You're welcome. Cheers. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.